Welcome back to Stellar Horizons Campaign Game Playthrough, episode 42 and 3/4. This is a correction video for episode 42. In episode 42, the Battle of Jupiter, I just had a brain fart and swapped the advantage between the Asians' tactics die roll and the Americans' tactics die roll. So, plus I think, did a 1-point math error there and gave the Americans one more tactics point than should have occurred. So in that battle, when the Asians moved out, the Americans intercepted, and the resulting battle gave the Americans a 4-point tactics advantage. It should have been an Asian advantage of 3 points, and so we're going to proceed from that basis. I did a correction 42.5. I held on to the math error there, so I ended up giving the Asians only a 2-point tactics advantage, and then that resulted in that combat plus a follow-on combat. We're going to go ahead and scratch that video. I will take it out of the playlist, although I will probably keep the video up on my channel just so that somebody can watch it, because otherwise I think it's pretty valid and there's some interesting elements of play there, or implications that somebody could at least learn something from. So with that, we're going to keep everything else. I've reset the victory points that people have been awarded, the biology and engineering points that people got from ship recalls and destruction of ships. I've reset the location of the American CV4s and 3, and so we're going to proceed on the movement phase with the Asians. So when they made that move, they ended up with a 3 tactics point advantage, and they're going to use that. They were intercepted, but they're going to use the 3 tactics points advantage to avoid combat and move on into EO. From there, that kind of ends the Asians. All the other Asian movements are going to remain the same. The Russians move and their movements remain the same, and now it's the Americans. The Americans are going to follow the Asians into EO, and they have to make a decision now if they want to create a fleet with their CV4s or remain separate. If they join a fleet with the CV4s, they will be able to protect them, but if they remain separate, the Americans do get to initiate combat first. So if there's a combat, the Americans initiate a combat, we'll see how that goes. A surviving Asian fleet would be able to attack the American CV4s. I'm not sure if that's the best way to go, but that's what we're going to find out. The Asian CV3 over here is going to remain at the base. It doesn't want to get mixed up in all of this. It could go to Europa, but I think we're just going to wait a turn and see how things turn out. And so with that, let's lay out the fleets. The interception is guaranteed, so we're just going to go ahead and lay things out here. So the base number for interception is a 4, but after we account for the size of the fleets, it's an 11. Both sides get to subtract 2 from their die roll. So that's what we're looking at. So we're going to roll some dice here. Red is for the Asians and black is for the Americans, and the lower value has the advantage. Well, that's a big shift there. So that's great for the Asians. That's a 7-point tactics advantage for the Asians. So one thing they could do is avoid combat. So that'll be 7 points. Now both sides also would give each other 4 points based off of the accumulated, add up the CV size values, divide by 7, drop the remainder. It ends up being 4 to both. They both also have offsetting tactics tech of +2, so that offsets. So the difference there is 7-point advantage to the Asians. So let's consider the options. The Asians could just simply avoid combat. And then the Asians can, in the combat phase, right after we resolve this, they could attack those CV4s and probably destroy them. That sounds like a pretty good option. But the other option here is with 7 tactics points. I think we've seen now that being able to call the shots in combat is quite powerful and can lead to the destruction of the enemy ships, where instead of just having the damage get spread around. Another choice would be for the Asians to, instead of strike combat, go for a very deadly combat, and it would probably be kind of a mutually assured destruction, but go for direct fire combat and end up, so we're liable to end, and the fighters and the bombers won't be in play, so there won't be any of the damage reduction. So we're liable to end up with a whole bunch of hits that would end up destroying, most of the fleets. There'd probably be a little bit of a remainder. So let me think about that for a second. Okay, so the Asians are not going to avoid combat, and they're not going to do direct combat. So they're going to go with the strike combat. And I keep on forgetting, because we're at embargo, if the Asians were to avoid combat here and turn around and attack the CV4s would just be able to surrender. It would give the Americans would have to give the Asians a political marker. That's not bad. And they would lose the cargo that they're carrying, and they would become recalled. And that certainly is a win for the Asians. The situation, though, is with these fleets, the size that we've seen and the damage that can be done, this is probably about the best that the Asians can hope for. They risk another combat and get a bad search roll and are fighting at a tactics disadvantage, then things can go very badly. So I think they're hoping that with the 7 tactics points advantage that they have right now, that they need to take advantage of that. So when we add up the combat factors, so let's figure out how much damage both sides are going to do. So the Asians have 6 fighters, or 6 drones, and they have to be used as fighters because they don't have the bomber tech. The Americans have 7 drones, and they will use, just like in episode, I think, we're going to go with 5 fighters and 2 bombers. The Asians have 7 tactics points. I think they will use one of them for a +1 damage, or I'm sorry, that's 2 of them, and then the other 5 will be used to call shots, on either their fleet or the American fleet as the situation arises. For combat strength, the Asians have 30, the Americans have 29. They both have a +5 tech, and the Americans give the Asians +3 for 3 ships past 1, and the Asians give the Americans +4. So both sides end up with 38. We're going to roll 38 plus a d10. So let's roll those. So just looking at kind of the ranges. So we're going to be starting off here at this 38, 39, 14 damage, and adding a d10. Subtracting the fighters. The Americans are getting +2 damage for 2 bombers, but they're also reducing 1 less damage with their fighters. So let's see what those die rolls look like. Again, the Asians are going to be the red one, and high numbers are good here, and they rolled the same. So let's take a look at what that amounts to. 38 plus 5 is 43. That's 16 damage that both sides are doing to each other. So let's do our inflicted. So the Asians are inflicting 16, subtracting the 5 fighters. Takes it down to 11. And add 1, back up to 12. They're inflicting 12 hits. The Americans are inflicting the same 16, subtracting 6 down to 10 and back up to, so they're both inflicting 12 hits. So let's see here, damage, and I think this was a mistake I made. The damage will be allocated to the Americans first. For strikes, the side inflicting damage picks the first target. I think I did that opposite last time. So what I'm going to do here, set up a column of 12 hits for the Americans. And so we're going to do the Americans on the left. Now the Asians can call the shots on 5 hits. The Asians go first, and they would like to take out the Constitution. So they're going to go 1 there. Americans will put 1 on CV6. Asians are going to go here. Americans are going to put 1 on the Polaris. Asians go here. Americans are going to put 1 over here on the CV8. Asians go here. Americans are going to pick anybody they pick is going to lose a drone. They're going to go for that CV8. The Asians now pick this one, And at this point, the Asians are going to use 2 of their 5 choices to take those choices away from the Americans and put the remaining 3 damage on this CV8 to destroy it. So we're just going to turn this guy upside down and remove all that damage. Now we do the same thing again. And sorry for the quiet, I'm just being meticulous here. So what's the strategy here? Well, we already know that there's 3 tactics points that the Asians have and the Americans don't. So the Americans are going to end up with 3 damage that they get to apply. There's no reason not for the Asians to not assign damage with those remaining points. So the question is, can the Asians, what's the best way to allocate that so that they do not, they may save their ships, it may be better though to let one of the CV5s get destroyed or something and not have a whole bunch of damaged ships. So I'm thinking that that might be the correct play, because otherwise they're liable to have a bunch of damage spread out over several ships, potentially have some recalls, and end up less combat effective. The Americans get to assign damage first. What would be the priority if you only have a little bit of damage to assign? I think the Americans are going to pick a larger ship and hope for a recall. Now the question is, so do you do it for on a CV5 that contributes 6 strength and has 1 drone, or 4 and 2 drones? I think they'll try it on the 6. So the Asians are going to go there. The Americans are going to go here. The Asians are going to go there. Americans here. So that's, well, we'll just leave it 3. And at this point the Asians say, okay, we're going to assign the rest of the damage. So they can safely go like 1, 1, and 1. They don't have to lose the CV6. But, so they could spread it out, but then that's going to strip them of their drones. This one's already lost its drone. They put more damage on the 7 and the 6 and try to keep them both alive. Let's try that strategy. So they'll put 1 there, that still has a drone. And then they'll put the remaining 3, so for a total of 6 on this CV7. So this guy's almost dead. So it's going to come down to recalls. So I'm going to take this off, make that 2 3s, and this one has 1 3. And that is the damage. So with that, now the post-combat, we need to earn victory points, earn equivalent engineering tech. The Americans will earn engineering tech markers, and then we're going to roll recalls for all of the damage. And the victory points that for CV, 4 victory markers for a CV7 or larger. So 4 victory points for the Asians. And I'm using a 5. I just took 2 away from them, but I wanted to just keep track of what they've earned so far. And so the equivalent is supposed to be 4 engineering markers for the Americans. Let's get those 4 engineering markers for them. Sorry, I'm being a little slow here, but I got a 5, a 1, a 2, and I accidentally have some biology markers in there, and a 1. Okay, let's do some recalls. So we're going to go just left to right, top to bottom. Take the CV8 out. So recall rolls, 1 for the Calvari at 2%. It's a recall and a biology marker. Well, I'll do the biology after. Next, the Chakra, 60. 3 rolls for the Delhi, 75, 28, and 87. Now 6 rolls for the CV7, 26, 60, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The 6th one was a 6%. And then 1 roll. Loose die. 1 roll for the 77. So this one didn't hurt the Asians too bad. This one, that lost them 5 strength points and well, didn't really lose them the strength points. So that's important to note. Even from an offensive standpoint, now because they have reserved ships and a fleet, the Asians are not going to be able to attack the American CV4s because they can't search for them because they've got reserved ships in their fleet. So the CV4s are going to be safe. But the combat strength is still there. So if the Americans were to attack them again, this guy still is contributing 1 drone and 5 points of strength to a combat. It's just that the Asian fleet cannot initiate combat. American CV6, 65, second CV6, 13. So that is also going to make this fleet a little weaker. CV8 has 2 rolls, 51 and 50 2. So the Asians are earning 2 biology markers. A 1 and a 2. And the Americans get a 3. Okay, so that is the situation. We've got 2 fleets at EO with this damage. I'm going to keep it. I'm just going to keep them here for now. And just like in episode 42, I'm going to put some upside down base markers to note that those ships are there. So the Asian combat phase comes around. Because they've got recalled ships, they cannot search for the American CV4s. So that's going to end the Asians' combat phase. So in the mining phase, those guys did do mining again and picked up 3 more. So I'm going to make that a 2. And give them another 2. So what's the situation? So that's definitely different than what we have seen previously. Well, the Asians have done pretty well. Let's just look at the remaining. If they were to get rid of their reserved ships from their fleets, or engage, you know, the Americans could try to drop that guy from the fleet and engage, and they would be looking at 10 combat factors because you subtract out the damage. So that's actually 9, not 10. And 3-4 drones. 9 strength and 3 drones offensively. The Asians are looking at 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 6 is 12 combat strength offensively with 1, 2, 3 drones. So the Asians have just a slight offensive advantage. If they were to get attacked though, the other side, you know, then you'd bring in 5 more strength and a drone, and then like 1 more strength. You'd also probably lose that ship. So we won't know until the next turn, but I think we're going to stop the video here now because we don't have a second combat. And we will have to pick up what's going to happen. Do the Asians move? The Asians, well, here's the Asians' problems. They do have a large spaceport here at ECTA. It's got a little bit of, they could recall, they could flip the 2 ships back over, but they only have 1 ore to repair damage. The Americans can get their ship, the remaining ship, back in play. They only have 3 ore here, but they've got ore on those ships. So I think the Americans can probably get back into action a little sooner. The Asians don't have any money, so they can't send ore in the exact following turn, but they are going to, at the end of next turn, be able to trade and get $16 billion. So in 2 turns, they could have some ore, but it still wouldn't be available for fixing anything. So it'd be 3 turns before the Asians would be able to repair the damage that they've sustained if they remain in the Jupiter system. So I think it makes sense for the Asians to try to pull out Or maybe they just break off the reserved ships and send them back and try to cause a little more damage with what they've got remaining. But that ends up being a crapshoot as well. Just from hull hits remaining, the Americans can sustain 6 and 5. So 13 hits on those two. I'm just thinking if both sides drop their reserved ships, managed to get them sent away. And the Asians 4 plus 3 7 and 6 13. So yeah, they're still pretty equivalent on kind of what they've got ready and able to fight with. So we'll look at that some more, but I imagine the Asians will probably just try to disengage. They haven't lost a ship. They've killed an American CV-8 and pulling back to repair maybe the best that they can do, because that was a 20 resources worth of ship there. Of course, the Americans can just immediately pay cash for it at Earth and rebuild it. But if they do that, it's still a 3-year journey out to Jupiter. Unless they want to, they could, with that CV-8, yeah, it's got 10 combat factors, so it can, they could send it to Mars and blockade Mars, which would cause a reduction in the settlements. That might be worth doing. So there's different options, and we'll explore them in the next turn. Thanks for watching, and thanks for bearing with me as we kind of stumble through all these combats, or attempts at combats. But I think we've got this one right all the way. Thanks.